So now that the regional economic development councils are coming together, members need to get right to work. They are competing for hundreds of millions of dollars in state aid, but they only have until mid-November to come up with a 5-year plan for spurring economic development and, in some regions, reversing decades of job loss. My next guest will be serving on the Western New York Council. Andrew Rudnick joins me now from Buffalo. He is the president and CEO of the Buffalo-Niagara Partnership. That is a coalition of employers who aim at helping one another grow. Mr. Rudnick, it is great to see you. Thanks so much for making time for us.
Liz, glad to be here.
So why do you believe that this competitive process that the governor has set up is going to succeed where decades, really, of economic development policy set by state government has failed?
Well, I don't think expectation may be the right word. Hope may be a better one to use.
Okay.
And because there's a lot of definition still to be played out, and as you say, played out over a short period of time.
Right.
I do believe that the regional approach is the right one. Not, every region has the same history or the same future or the same present, and not every region is the same size, and not every region, I'm sorry to say, has the same opportunity as every other one. And good business economics say you need to look at yourself as a marketplace, not a political geography. And I think the way the regions are set up, by and large, is with that very much in mind.
Well,
so
right.
I'm a big advocate for the regional approach. I don't know whether the competitive approach necessarily goes along with the regional approach. That's what we'll find out. Yeah,
that is exactly actually leading into my next question, and I didn't even have to plant it there. That's amazing how that happens. The governor yesterday was talking about false borders. In other words, you have these lines of towns and cities and villages, etc., and within those lines there are people who are not talking to one another, and therefore they don't market themselves as a region. Although you have been seeing, for example, the Hudson Valley markets itself as a tourist destination, and the Hudson Valley, depending on what your definition is, could start anywhere from Westchester and go up as high as, I don't know, maybe even Greene County, certainly Columbia County, and then Western New York is a whole collection of destinations and counties. The competitive part, though, not everyone can win. Isn't that the problem?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty... If everybody is going to win, then it's not competitive, it's political. And it's going to be interesting to see how winners and losers are actually going to exist. And what happens if you're a loser? Do you kind of pull your head between your legs and you walk away in the other direction? I don't know. I also have a little bit of a concern, although I heard earlier this morning that there is an initiative, there will be an initiative, state-level initiative, a council at the state level, and that is there are some regions, and this is specifically the case upstate, where there already is inter-regional collaboration.
Right.
And the different councils are splitting up those regions into their own separate marketplaces. And so I'm trying to figure out whether collaboration takes a back seat, multi-region collaboration takes a back seat, or is that one of those definitions, which I think is the case, one of those definitions that really does have to be played out over the next couple of months.
Andrew, did you ever watch the TV show Lost? Or did you ever watch, I don't know, the one where you get voted off the island, right? I mean, any one of these TV shows, it sort of reminds me of people forming coalitions where everybody is in it to survive or to win, if you will, and yet they form these temporary coalitions and then in order to beat the other people. I mean, that seems to me that you could have a situation where, I don't know, certain regions gang up against other regions. I mean, you could get like a cannibalistic situation in this.
Well, it certainly could be, when you think about it in the abstract, Liz, there are a number of the regions that have, or at least say they have, the same target industries as their high prospects for job and investment growth. And so they're going to be making competitive proposals for some of the same, nominally for some of those same industries. Actually, though, talk about collaboration. I do think the one most important collaboration that's going to result if what the governor says is in place plays out that way is the collaboration of the agencies at the state level who are going to deliver the resources and the programs. That's where there's been far more fragmentation, far more isolation, far more differentiated criteria, not enough conversation among and between the various players who inevitably impact an investment or job creation decision. And if that collaboration is enhanced by this approach, that itself may be a home run for economic development.
Okay, so yesterday I spoke with someone who's actually from your neck of the woods, Allison Dewey. I'm sure that you probably know who she is. There's
yes,
some
sure.
concern that maybe business is getting too much of a say in this particular model, and then folks like organized labor and maybe some of the community-based entities are not, and then what you end up with is, you know, titans of industry winning while some of the people who are going to be working at these locations get left out. How do you ensure that that sort of thing doesn't happen?
Well, the first thing I think you've got to do is define economic development. And it's obvious that Allison has a particular definition, and I'm not suggesting it's a wrong one, but a particular definition that is different than the definition of organizations like ours. By the way, organized labor, Paul Brown, who's on the Western New York Council, shares the same definition that the business community has. So it's not labor versus business.
Well, labor is striated, right? I mean, labor has always been...
Right, correct. Labor...
Yeah, okay.
Right.
You have people who are more
labor is no more monolithic.
Right.
Right. Labor is no more monolithic than business is monolithic.
Indeed.
But I think there is a distinction that is going to have to be addressed. And I'm going to describe it as business development versus community development.
Okay.
And in ESD's history, so you've got to assume in the definition of economic development that the governor and lieutenant governor are promoting, it's not quite clear how community development is involved in this. And let me define the distinction. Business development is what I think drives economic development, the creation of or stimulation of more private sector investment and more private sector jobs as a result of competitive companies. That needs to be at the core. Community development often has to do with building communities, housing, recreation, etc., which may not create a job at all. I'm not suggesting that isn't important, but it's not the same thing.
Interesting.
And I think we need to be very clear, and that's really somewhat at the core of Allison's expression.
It is.
Because if we're talking about our definition of economic development, then I'm afraid Allison, too bad.
Right.
But if it's her definition, then we've got to incorporate some things that may be, unless we're very crafty, clever, and maybe mercurial, there may be some tension between stimulating private sector jobs, creating more investment to make companies competitive, and doing things that meet Allison's agenda.
Andrew,
what happens when that tension occurs?
Let me ask you this. You are a member of the Committee to Save New York, correct? This is an organization that formed, that's new, that formed, it's a pro-business organization, it's a pro-Andrew Cuomo organization that formed to support his policies that business also supports. For example, the property tax cap was a huge issue. Spent almost 9.7 and change million dollars to run advertisements and support the governor's policies, some of his policies, not all of them.
Right.
Now some of these folks, like yourself, are sitting on these regional economic development councils. Do you think that, is that an instance of is one connected to the other, for lack of a better term? Obviously it's not a quid pro quo because you're doing it for free. But certainly when you're talking about business development and economic development, some people got on the councils and some people didn't.
Right. And there were certain members of the Committee to Save New York who aren't on any of the councils,
correct.
As far as I know. And obviously there are a lot of members who were not on the Committee to Save New York who are on the councils.
Right.
But let me start. the members of the Committee to Save New York, who represented more than just business, by the way. Again, some of organized labor was a member of the Committee to Save New York.
Right.
But the Committee to Save New York, geographically distributed across the state, albeit most of the people and most of the resources came from New York City. The Committee to Save New York was not so much about Cuomo, but was about two things, which are Cuomo's platform. The first was balancing the budget without increasing taxes and fees, and the second was addressing the property tax, which in the governor's statement here yesterday, he called the most obnoxious tax that he could think of.
Yeah.
And where the members of the committee are absolutely in lockstep with the governor is the belief that you have to have put that house in order. The fiscal order of the balanced budget, with cutting the deficit, balancing the budget without more taxes and fees, and putting a lid on the most obnoxious tax, the property tax cap. And you need to set that stage in order for the work that these councils are going to do to have any chance of actually being successful in a competitive economic development marketplace.
Okay, so when you got, unfortunately we're out of time, but I'd like to ask you to come back and give us a little bit of a progress report, if you will, maybe in 2 months or so before the November 14th deadline, if you would not mind doing that.
I'd be happy to do it. It's really important work.
Great. Okay. So, Andrew Rudnick, thank you so much for being with us. We will be seeing you soon to get a report on what's going on here. Thank you.
You're welcome.